Hello, welcome to Flory Models. I'm Flory. Well, as you can probably tell immediately, we're a little bit cleaner here, and we can only mean one thing. The light is definitely inside the Star Destroyer, shall we say, on this particular one. Pushed on really heavily with this one. I had more problems, to be honest. Easy way to describe it is watch the video. There's loads of little bits, problems we had to sort out, changes we made on the inside, the way we were going to do it, things like that. Far too many to list here on the new show, but certainly we are now in one piece. And I must admit, I forgot I was going to get the scales out to show you today, but this actually is quite heavy. The nice thing about this thing though, it is solid with the exception of the top bits which are still loose. These little guys up here aren't actually fitted in yet, so those can actually come off just a second as we do this. But certainly we're now to that point where, if we flip it around, as you can see, we're all in positioned, ready to go. If we flip him over, now you can actually chuck this thing around without the risk of it all falling apart. You probably see underneath here, we've marked out how we're exactly going to have it. We've done a little bit more clean-up work, to be honest. I was going around with a Dremel because it's quicker, doing a little bit of sanding and everything else. But the big thing is, hopefully, if we just flip this over, this isn't the right power supply for it, because I'll show you the other one in a minute. But there we go. There's our lights on here. I'll just move that box off the power line. It's a very short cable, which I'll show you in a moment. But that's our engine lights on. And as I say, now we're on our remote. I won't blind you totally by pointing at the camera, but basically there we go. But with our remote, hopefully, we can, he says, hoping they're going to work. I'm going to turn down just a little bit. Where are we? 50. What it is, there we go. There you go, going down. That's right, as I was looking at the camera instead of them, but you see, we can actually turn them down, which is quite nice. So it's not blinding. So in the dark, it won't be, you know, on full pelt. Or, as I say, we can turn them up just like that. Then if we flip it around, you can probably see a few little test holes. I don't know how well the camera pick up. We've got one, let me look at it myself, one down the front here. These are just tester holes, and we've got little ones are dotted around here down the sides and everything else, really to make sure we're all completely light fast and the lights are still working. Because the big trouble is I painted it all black on the inside. We put it together, sealed it all up. We then used PVA glue right the way around the outside of this to seal it up. Then we painted over the top of that. And then you're thinking, are they on? Are they actually working? You know, I can't see any light coming through, so we must have some problems. So I put a few little tiny holes in it just to see if our effect is going to work. So if we just unplug this so I can chuck it around. So really, the next part is up and ready to go, where we almost get to this stage. I think we're just literally a little bit short of it. I'm gonna have to put it down. I think it weighs a ton. Okay, but certainly the light is definitely at the end of the tunnel now. We've got our new wiring system of how we're going to wire this all up and everything. So as you might be able to see on the end here, we've got a little fixture. This is all welded and locked into position. It's going to stand on this, so it's actually going to sit on it, which will power this thing up. And because we've got a remote control, we can do the different lighting effects and everything just with that. So we don't even have to have an on-off switch or anything really if we don't want to. So there we go. We are literally, that's it. All that playing, sand, terrible resin. I must admit, I clean this desk and I've been cleaning it as I go, and it's absolutely everywhere resin dust. But the light is at the end of the tunnel. So what's going to happen now is just to cover up the engines at the back, so obviously we don't get any spray down there. A few little holes around it which are deliberately left open. Then what we can do is give this a full black coat of paint. It's going to have two, completely make it dead flat, as in light fast and everything else, so no light can bleed through it. And then we are on with all the paintwork. And as I said before, what I said in the show, we're going to have the camera here. We're going to get the other spray booths out. We're going to have them in front, and we're going to paint this one so we can actually, the full camera is all working to capture all of it. Loads of people offering me advice on the way to do it and everything else like that. I think some of you guys overcomplicate stuff, you know, no disrespect, but you know, the way I'm going to do it I think is probably the easiest and fastest way to do it. Yes, you can go around and do various things, like some of you guys are explaining techniques which we used on the real things and various things like that, but from my point of view, I'm just going to paint it completely black. Then I'm going to do it actually the grey, original flat grey, which is going to be roughly XF19, something like that over it. Then really we're going to go round and we're going to actually weather it up by giving it bleaching and darkening, not by changing the colour so much, just by adding black and white to that base colour to change all the shades and shadows on it. And then what will happen is we're going to go round and then we're going to do a little bit more weathering, some dirt marks, things like that, airbrush all of those on. Then it'd be a case of sealing it completely with a dead flat finish, and then they're going to use the weathering wash right the way over the top of this one, just going to airbrush it on and probably not even touch it. We're going to use definitely a grey, a dark grey, not going to be the grime, and it's not going to be a black because that'd be too strong, because we don't want to fill up all these lines, otherwise it's going to look like a giant grid. But certainly from our point of view, we just want to give it that effect of, so it'd probably be like the concrete grey, or just our grey colour, a little bit darkened to go round. Seal that down again, and then we can go on with all the little tiny bits, because there is quite a bit of photo etch to go on this one. We've got to put in all the laser guns, some of the detail, there's more detailing to go down the side, but because we want to use the weathering wash, we want to brush it around, a little bit of dry brushing, things like that with it. We don't want to knock any of these bits off. But certainly from my point of view, it's a nice thing now, because we've got it here and the light is definitely at the end of the tunnel with this one, because the messy bits are all out of the way. When I want to move it out of the way, I can just literally pick it up and bung it on the other side of the desk without the risk of breaking anything and things like that. I've got a stand rigged up. I've got two stands. I've got the real one, which is a nice bit of wood, and we've got to polish the brass rods, and I've got another one for it to stand on whilst we airbrush it, so I can get sort of underneath it and maneuver it around and everything else like that. So that's the thing with that one. So part, what are we on now? Six I think it is up on the site now. Gets you really to this position. We talk obviously more about the electronics that are going in here. I show about the electronics that are all in here, the LEDs, the wireless control for it, showing you how it all works, how we've put all the lighting in here. As I said, there's 257 LEDs in this. So there's not short of light, that's for certain. In testing, we put it in the dark, as I said last night, and it looked fantastic. Really did look good. You turn the lights right down low, it gives that nice glow to it and everything else without being too strong. But there again, in daylight, studio lights, things like that, for showing you guys, I can crank it up to 100% and you can still see all the bits and pieces going on with it, so it's really nice. But needless to say, it's quite nice. We're slightly to the end of the old tunnel here. There's still a lot to go on, as I said, so I don't think this is going to be, that's it, 1, 2, miss a few, 99 and we're done, because certainly we've got a lot more parts to go on there. But really enjoying it. So anyway, part 6 is on the site now. I can do this with it. I couldn't do that before without it falling apart. Let me just pop it over there, so I'm going to crush something. All right. So there we go. Part 6 up on the site. I'm going to start next week on the next build, and I'm going to do something which will be a bit of a surprise to everyone. I'm just going to do a small, quick little build, literally a small one, purely for me. It's to get the mojo back. I get lots of people ask me, and they say about like, how do you keep building, because obviously I build every single day, basically 7 days a week, and it keeps the mojo for going it. What I like to do is push myself quite heavily on a build, and I know a lot of you guys do. You'll do a build and then it'll stall, okay? I don't have the luxury of it stalling, because obviously with you guys, you're my sort of inspiration to keep me going forward with it. But I always say to guys, if you've stalled on a build, go off and do something else. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a real quick little fast build that I'll record and everything as normal, but it's only going to take literally a week, and it just gets my mojo back. And then I'm going to start on the hind, because obviously that's going to be quite a big one to go through and everything else. I'm also working on quite a few 1/72 Hawks at the moment. I'm going to do a little bit of clip on that, will probably be next week, because I'll explain we're not actually going to be here next week, so you can watch a little bit on that next week. But if you do a little quick build, get your mojo back. It doesn't matter if it's armour, if it's civil stuff, or aircraft, helicopters, ships, whatever. If you do something nice and speedy, it just gets the mojo back, because otherwise you get caught up doing a build and you're so focused on it and you sort of burn yourself out, can't be bothered to do anymore. So that's the point with that one. So nice quick little build coming out. I know you're going to enjoy it anyway. As I said, next week we are not here because we're actually at RAF Valley for the day on the Thursday, and obviously I film this on Thursday mornings, Thursday midday as it is today, or near 2 o'clock actually. We're running behind, but certainly, so I won't be back until God knows what time on the Friday. Obviously it's a 6-hour trip up there, 6 hours back as well, so that's another half a day out the window. So no new show next week, but I will do a thing on the Red Arrows Hawks, which as you'll see, I'll do a little thing about it, so that'll be part of the new show as we go on like that. So first up, a couple of reviews for you. We're going to start in reverse order somewhat, because obviously we're talking about the Star Destroyer. We're going to talk about, I showed it the other week and I had loads of emails saying, oh, what is it, brilliant, all the rest of it studio scale. So here is the T65 Resin X-Wing studio scale. Okay, now, we spoke about it a few weeks ago and we were talking about different forms of modelling, and we were talking about resin models, garage kits, limited run, things like that. Now in the past we've covered limited run kits. They tend to be your sort of standard styrene kit, a little bit rough around the edges, shall we say, and they tend to be lacking in things like detail, but locating tabs, things like that. But what they do make up on, what you do tend to find is the styrene makes up the bulk, and then they come along and they'll give you in the kit things like photo etch, resin parts, which gives you the detail that is lacking from the styrene. So really the outward shell, things like that, and you move through. Being a limited run kit, you do tend to pay a little bit more for them. They do tend to be something not mainstream and that is perhaps not available in styrene in that particular scale or something else like that. And then obviously you get garage kits, or we call them, or in the UK, garage kits. The thing with garage kits is, it is what it says. It is made in someone's garage. So you do have to allow for that there will be some quirks, okay? There will be some fit issues. There is going to be, if you're using resin, which 99% of them are, you are going to get air bubbles, things like that, where you don't have this perhaps on more professional line with resin kits that are available through big manufacturers, but then you pay big money. These tend to be life works from some guys who spend their entire time making and upgrading and improving on a certain subject. So perhaps, you know, in this case it's like the X-Wing. In other cases recently we've been working on things like Star Destroyers and Star Wars based, but anything for sort of sci-fi, which the mainstream modelers or model companies should say don't do, because of there's probably not enough sales available of them. So if you do want a 3-foot Star Destroyer like I've been working on recently, you are going to have to either find something done back in the day, or a garage kit of it, or a garage kit that's available where somebody has spent a lot of time, a lot of money perfecting a type of kit. But as you said, you are going to pay through the nose, and costs vary, anything from $100 to $600 for these types of kits. You know, sometimes they'll go even higher depending obviously on the scale, the sizing of them. But if you do want something like, as I'm going to show you here, a studio scale X-Wing fighter, the only way you're going to do this is to be able to do it in resin. Now over the years there's been various manufacturers of them around. This is Scott Alexander kit. He was a master modeler, very well respected in the community and everything else like that, and to get a hold of his kits are an absolute joy, because they tend to be of a certain standard, shall we say. And that's the thing with garage kits. Standards vary, because you can get a guy who's literally making them in his back room to companies who've got, like, you know, light industrial units and they're making them there and things like that. And obviously you've got the quality of the guy who is actually doing it. Now, is this a guy who just does it as a hobby, you know, who hasn't been doing it very long, but he's got an idea of what he wants? Then you can, you know, you can say it's going to be a little bit basic and you can add your details to it. Or do you go for something with a guy who maybe have a film and prop making background, who's now, you know, developed his own company and moved on with it and doing something along those scales? So I think what I'm trying to get over here, when you open the box, it could be anything. Unless you know that manufacturer and you know their work and you know what you're looking for and what you're going to get, do your research first. Pop on the internet. Google is your friend, okay? Google them, see what other people, chances are somebody's built it, okay? And there's probably going to be a forum around somewhere in the world where somebody's actually built that particular kit, and you can have a look at it and see if you want to invest that amount of time and money. Because as we know, working on the Star Destroyer recently, I've spent over a month solid on that particular kit, and it's not even in paint yet, purely because it's got so many problems that I've had to overcome. We've taken a kit and cut the hell out of it. I've removed probably a couple of pounds of resin out of it for one, and put it together in a way I feel is better than the kit puts it together, certainly. And that's what you have to expect when you're doing this one. So what I'm going to do is show you this particular one, but this is a kit I've been had here, and really it gives you an idea of what you can actually expect from a garage kit. So basically, this particular one is say from Scott Alexander. It's a studio scale T65 X-Wing from Star Wars. Okay, so in the box. Now, I have had this open once before because we've seen it. You're normally going to get some form of instructions. Now, this can be in the form of printed, it may be on a CD, they may give you a link to a video build of it or something else like that, certainly. What you will get 99% of the time, or 100% from I've been doing these, is fantastic backup from the manufacturer. So if you open up your parts and suddenly you find that this bit's a bit wrong, it's got a massive air hole in it, it's just not right, contact the guy who's made it. The chances are, in every single case I've done this, I've had a replacement sent. You know, they send you a replacement part and a big apology and everything else like that. But you are gonna have to expect to get something like that. Now, normally these are all completely separately packed. So what I'm going to do differently, I'm going to get all the parts out, lay them out, and we can have a look at them, and you can look at different qualities and various things from it. Then we'll go through the instructions and you can see what it is. So to start with, if we just pop this over here, we'll start off with them first. What you got here is very, very large parts. Now this is obviously the belly of the X-Wing. Now, usual things to look out for. The scribing or the panel line detail is pretty faded, okay? So it's giving you the outline of what you need to do. And the great thing is, what I tend to do is when I start off, I'll rescribe everything. So all the panel lines are the same depth, the same sharpness, and everything else as you go along. You might also find that some of the details are a little bit softer than you want. So for instance, these plates running down here, you might think they're a little bit soft, I want to sharpen them up a bit, sand them completely off and replace them with plastic card or photo etch or whatever you want to do to liven it up. But these are the types of things you're going to have to expect on this. Now this is a pretty good one, to be honest. What we've actually got in here is something with not many air bubbles in it, but what you can expect when you're dealing with resin, especially of this scale, is the odd little air bubble in there. Remember, filler, just go through and do the motions, and we'll talk about it in a moment. So there we go, that's the bottom. This is the top, and there's a couple of separate parts in here. I'll just flip these out in a second, and we'll talk about them in a minute. This is the top, okay, so actually as you can see, you've got nice recessed panel line detailing on, a little bit flashy, a little bit grubby around the front. Again, it's the great thing with resin, it's very easy to work with. You can sand it, you can take care of it as you go through. A little bit off the end, we've got a couple of air bubbles, but luckily they're nowhere where we're going to worry about. Obviously the cockpit, you can see here's a little bit rough, it needs just to be sanded out, but as you'll see in a moment, you've got a tub that fits in on top. But usual thing is, it's just that little, it's been pulled from a mould, and that's it. Some guys will take the time, they'll clean it all up for you before they'll send it. Other guys will send it to you in the raw form. This one's had a little bit of clean up because obviously you can see on the end here it's been cut, sanded, flush and everything else, probably the plug from the mould where it came from. So there we go, that's those two. And then whilst we got them here, we got the cockpit. So as you can see, the detail, it's all there, it's just a little bit ropey. We might be able to see these instruments down in here. They are just a little bit, well, as you can see, one of them's completely gone over. There's a few bubbles in there. There's a little bit sort of scaling and things like that. And when you sit this guy just in here like this, you can see you've got a margin of error around the outside, which you need to be sanded and filled and put in correctly and everything else like that. But generally the detail is there as a start. Now again, if you're doing a project like this, and being studio scale, it's so big, what I would do, to be honest, is completely redo the cockpit. I'd use this as the basics, and then I might decide that I'll do plastic art. So if you're making small circles of it, you can use a punch set, something like this, put your plastic card in, give it a knot, perfect circles, you can then redo them. The same obviously if you're doing squares, stuff like that. And then, you know, are you going to light it? Are you going to put LED lights into this one? A lot of people do, I know. There's plenty of room, that's a nice thing for it, and going through. But as you can see, we've got a few little air bubbles underneath, alright, so they're going to need to be sort of taken care of and things like that if they're on the surface. But being underneath, you're not going to worry about it. But you know, it is that level that you're looking at. So again, here we've got the spine area. This is where your little R2 unit would fit in the back here, and it goes in just like this. Again, some of the details you might think, that's fantastic, I'm going to leave it. Okay, other things you might think, well, I think I can do that better, so I might do it in photo etch. This is the point to it, you're just going to take your time. The great thing about these things is some of the parts you can look at and you think, I know where that's from, from different kits and things like that. But as you said, that would sit in the back there like that. And then you've got these two go together. Okay, and this gives you an idea of the scale of how big this is going to be. And remember, these two halves don't actually go totally together. Okay, there is going to be a slight difference to them. But again, if we pop these parts out, excuse the helicopter, you might be able to see, if we hold the backs together and you see the front, we've got quite a gap there. If I push them together, you can see. So that's the other thing, you're not going to get perfect joints. Being resin though, as we found out at the Star Destroyer, trust me, if you want to see a lesson in working with resin, go and watch that video. You need to expect these things to be done, but the big thing is you want to know which one's wrong, if it's the top or the bottom. So you need to sort of, you know, place them out. These are flat, both of them like this. Actually it's the top one that's slightly off, it's got a slight warp on it, but making sure you're all totally square as you go through. Okay, so let's just pop those two on the top. Okay, so we've got here, this is the end plate that goes onto the back of it, and as you can see, very nice detail. Couple of little air holes in there again. As you can see, you've got lots of them on the top here, but luckily all the ones in here are pretty good. But this is the guy that sort of, you know, comes in on the back here. So that way up, there it is. That's going to fit in the back just like this. Okay, and away it goes through. But it's giving you an idea of the size of how big this thing's going to be. Then we've got down here, this is a nice little touch. One of the big things with resin is that over time it can sag and warp, and what's lovely with this particular one, which are hollow, is these have got a core of rod in there. Now this will stop it sort of sagging and everything else. So as you can see, we've got a little bit of a seam line from the mold going down there. You're going to need a little bit of work to polish them up, but what this will stop, one, it makes a nice secure joint when it gets put onto the rest of the laser cannon, okay, and secondly, it will stop it from actually physically sagging over time. And things like a small core of resin like that, over time is going to go bleh, okay. So we've obviously got 4 of those. All right, and then if we just make our way through, this is the nose plug for the X-Wing. Okay, so obviously this guy is the one that fits on the end just like this. So this gives you your idea of how big this one is. So from a centimetre apart from nose to the back end, okay, it's going to be 50 centimetres. So it is going to be quite large. And don't forget, the X-Wing, by the time it's got its X-Wing on it, it does take up quite a bit of room. Okay, so down in here, we have one of the engine type details, and as you can see, we've got a nice detail on this, okay, with the resin and everything else. So this is our nice intake as we're looking down into it like that. So again, you could detail up on the inside. That's what you're going to do with these, okay. But this is the point I'm trying to get over this. This is where you make your start, okay. This is where you're going to turn around and say to yourself, right, okay, this is my basic, I've now got a whacking great X-Wing fighter, okay, and then I can go around and super detail it. So this is part of the wing section. So you see we've got the engine down here on the inside, a little bit off the butts, and this is where it's all going to sort of fit together with getting those the wings in the right configuration and everything else. So we've got a few of those. I won't bother getting all of those out. There's another one there as well. So then down in here, we can see this is our center of the X-Wing system, I do believe, which is going to go something like this. Okay, so we've got 2 very nice systems there. Okay, and you've got a small little tiny crack running through that one. Okay, so that's not a problem. Simple filler job, and you're good to go on that one. Okay, so it's quite nice these all being taped up. So let's just untape this guy. See what we got in here. Okay, now obviously we've got 4 of these, because these will be our engines for the rear. Okay, and these should, that's it. So actually what you've got is a tiny little bit of flash going on inside these end nozzles, okay, which do look surprisingly something like a phantom nozzle. Okay, and then obviously in the middle there, but these are for our engines, which then obviously going to come along, and you will something along the lines of click onto the back of these when it's on the back of the wing and everything else, and coming forward. But again, very nice detail. But what you could do is say, right, okay, well I can see where the wiring and the line detail is and everything for this particular one, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace it with lead wire, something else like that, which is what we did, if you remember, with the intruder build. So you can take little bits of your modelling you've done from everywhere, okay, and then come along and say, well look, we did something on the intruder, we upgraded that engine and made it look so much better by replacing all the moulded in wiring with real wiring, okay. You can do exactly the same with these. And that's the beauty over this, and this is the point I'm trying to make with this. These are just those intakes again. that you take all your modelling skill that you've had and developed all over the years, and you can put them to practice in so many different ways on here. So what we've actually got here is one of the wings, okay, from the X-Wing itself. So we've got some detail from the inside and then on the outside as well, because then obviously, I've got to remember if we've got the right one round here, these go on here, something like this. To get them all in and everything else is lining up correctly. But that's it, they'll go in. But as you can see, you've got quite nice joins, you've got no massive huge steps and caps and everything else to deal with these. They do go in quite nicely, and you've got details obviously running down in places perhaps you haven't noticed, which I hadn't, okay, as it works all its way in there, just like that. So we've got multiples of those, and then we've got a nice box of goodies in here, which in here we have the laser cannons. So obviously a multi-part setup, we have 4 of these in here, okay, because obviously these are the guys which are going to go onto this area, I do believe, once it's all cleaned up and everything, for our laser guns coming off of the X-Wing as we make its way around there. And then obviously we've got loads of little parts in here. So we've got this little one, which is, I presume, the rear guy. When it's all cleaned up and done, that will fit into the back here, just like that. But you can see, when you first get it out of the box, you're thinking, not much detail here, but it's all these little areas. So as you can see here, we've actually got all these small parts that are going to go on to detail everything up. And then just down in here, we have the intakes, okay, which are going to go on with these guys, I do believe, as they're going in one way or t'other, okay. We have our pilot, which if we just tip these out, we can go through what we've got here. So again, we have those intakes. Let's move those 4 out of the way. Okay, more smaller details. That'll be the belly. Got 4 of these. There we go. All the way through. Again, flashy but practical. Not going to be a problem to take care of those. So we've got 4 of the little engines tops to go on. We should have 4 of these. This is for the wing fold set. And going through, so we have 4 of those. We have our little R2 unit, which is a little bit crude, but as I say, you could simply live him up, but when he is having a good day, he'll then fit into your unit just like this, when he's all cleaned up, and he'll be sat in there just like that. And then we have Luke here, or anybody else as you want to do. Quite a nice, obviously he's a bit flashy, I can't put him together at the moment, but you can see his head would go on, but you do have a X-Wing pilot just like that. Again, usual thing, you need to sand him and clean him up to get him in, but he will sit into your fake base as you put it down in here, so you have to build a base for him to fit in, otherwise he's going to drop through, okay? But the idea is he will be sitting something like that, okay? Into your little X-Wing. So as I said, in here, these are all the parts for the laser cannons. Again, 4 of those all going through separate parts. So I know some people queried about the cost of something like this. Actually, when you get it all out, it's actually not too bad. And this thing is going to cost you around about sort of $400, okay, for something like this. This one was delivered to me $440, so I think they're going to be around about sort of $350, $300. But the thing is, you know, it is someone's life work. You do have the full backup of the guy who's put this thing together and going right the way through. So for instance, what have I done with the instructions? As you can see, you've got quite a lot of resin here, quite a lot of weight. And then your instructions, as I said, to be honest, it depends on who's doing this. It's very hit and miss. But as you can see, it talks you through all the areas, how it goes together. It talks about some little tips and tricks of how to get it all together with no problems. As you can see, this is that back area going on. Okay, it's talking about the wings. Obviously it used to have the old one and the new ones, where it's been upgraded, how to put it together, where it should join up and everything else. Okay, going right the way through. There's the top half of those nozzles when we've got the engine wings together. Those engines taking shape going through the back. and everything else. So there we go. That is what I would call a good kit. Okay, it's got plenty of scope for upgrading it, and that's the point of this. So you can turn around to yourself and, as I say, have a look on the old interweb and literally have a look around, just Google it, studio scale models. There's plenty of forums out there, some of them you pay for, some of them are free, okay, and they will talk about obviously where guys have done these, upgraded them. So especially things like adding lighting to them, sound effects, things like that, putting them onto stands so they can stand up and be fantastic. And this is one nice touch with this back plate, because what you could do is put a pole through here and have it on a mount from the rear, which means it looks great, okay? And then once you want to have it off of the mount, you can just have a plug unit and you pop this in, okay? And that's actually what it's for, okay? So for mounting this one, it's absolutely fantastic. A couple of things to talk about. Resin, obviously health and safety. This stuff is horrible stuff to work with, as I've been knowing with the Star Destroyer. Always wear a mask when you're sanding it. Try and do it outside, or if not, have a hoover running, something where it sucks up the dust and traps it in it. There's no point sucking it up and blowing it around somewhere else, okay? So make sure it's got a good filter on it. And then the usual things. Over time, resin does sag. So, like these guys have got bars in. Our Star Destroyer, that's fully reinforced now because I don't want it sagging in 30-40 years time and ending up like a mess. So hopefully that'll be fine. But if you can reinforce where you think it's going to go down, I don't think the nose on this is going to sag, but I think the wings might. So you might think to yourself, okay, well, you know, how hard would it to be is to put something like a brass rod through it. Okay, so you could channel, put it down, sand and fill on top, which I think would be a nice touch with these and stop these sagging, because I can imagine something like that with quite a lot of weight hanging on the end of it could end up going south, all right? Or if you display them, put them on their bum so the weight is distributed and not pulling on them. But there we go, that's it. That's garage kits or garage kits. Little things, actually it's quite a nice touch here. You might see on this one we've got like a seam running down here. Actually it's a poor mould, but the thing is, you can see you've got cracks on both sides. Where's my little gears? If I just zoom you down here, I can show you little things to expect, but don't worry too much about them, okay? Is hopefully you can see we've got this crack running over the top, okay? And on the other side, you catch it in the light, you can see it's like an over area. So it's quite hard to see it in the light. It's better with the naked eye. But again, you just sand, take care of it, perhaps a little bit of filler. But resin's great. It's so easy to work with. It's very soft. You can sand it, and then obviously invest in something like a little mini drill, okay? Because these guys, like I've got in the end here, you might be able to see a little drill bit. To be honest, on the Star Destroyer, I had to do a tiny little bit of cleanup using it like a dentist drill, and you can just zip in there, take care of it, and sand it out. If you're doing that with styrene with plastic, it's not as easy because it melts and makes a mess and everything else. But resin, no problem at all. You can just go in there and clean it up and go around. Like rescribing, it's very easy to rescribe resin. Just take your time with it, don't push, just drag, very nicely moves and everything else like that. Glues, obviously, your standard super glues, you've got your epoxies, things like that, you know, or you can do, which we've been showing recently, is I've been using resin to weld up and join and connect things as well as the super glue, so it's got double strength if you like and everything else like that. I've been finding it's been working really, really well. So there we go, that is resin in all its glory. Okay, so there we go. That is Scott Alexander's T65 X-Wing. Loads of people have asked me about it because I mentioned I do a lot of these. I haven't done them recently in many years, to come to think of it, but I used to do them a lot when I did commission work. So a lot of people don't like working with resin and things like that, so I used to done them. This particular kit is Scott Alexander, and he is, got it written down somewhere, atomiccitymodels.com or atomiccity@gmail.com to get hold of him. I paid $440 plus I got stung by coming in as well on that one, so I don't think as much. It's about £26 customs charge on top of that, so you know, you can do your arithmetic from that one and your conversions. They're not cheap, but I think I say in the actual review itself, it's a journey. You don't just build one of those purely out of the box, if we're honest. If you want to do that, I'd stick to the styrene, okay? If you're doing something like that, you could but it's well worth spending a little bit more time planning and things like that to get it up to a bit more scratch detailing and things like that. It just brings it up that little bit of a level. Also mounting them, how are you going to mount them and display them? A lot of X-Wings are mounted from the rear, as was the real thing, hence it has got the plug at the back to do it as well. To be honest, that's how hard to do it. But other people mount them in quite different ways, and how you mount them really depicts on how they're going to display and everything else like that. I had a guy email me when I first mentioned it, which is why I really did a review on it, and he asked me loads and loads of questions. And he said he not new to modelling, but he doesn't think his skills would stretch to it. I would recommend them. Okay, don't get me wrong, you're not going to waste your money on it ever, because you know they go together really, really well, and in some ways they go together a lot faster than a styrene kit with photo etch ever would. Okay, like the Star Destroyer, if you can imagine building that from scratch with all that detail, I'll be here for 10 years. Okay, but if you're doing something like that, all those details are in there, so they go together well. But what you do have to expect is it's not going to be a Tamiya just drop together and you're going to spend a weekend and it be together, and it won't. You are going to have problems. You are then have to think a little bit ahead with resin, certainly, like we did with the Star Destroyer. If it's going to sag, if you're going to have problems with it, then certainly, you know, that's the time to sort of think ahead of perhaps reinforcing things. A little bit of rod in there goes a long way just to hold things up and everything else like that. But I would certainly say if you work with resin before, then I can see no problem with it whatsoever. It's giant a resin kit, and you could build it straight out of the box and have a lovely model. But you probably find you can add, as I said, things like wiring detail, a little bit of photo etch from your scrap box goes a long way in these kits to really bring up to pace. And the big thing is, because they're big, you can do lots of things with weathering. So certainly things like, you know, dry brushes, paint modulation, things like that, and tonal changes. A difference in texture as well between gloss and flat on these things goes really well, and because of its scale it lends itself to do it. So I know they're a lot of money, yes they're a big investment, but I do think they're worth every single penny. You know, the guys who do these, if you ever get broken parts, if you ever have a problem, a mismolded part, always just go back to the guy who manufactures them, even if you didn't buy them from them in the first place, because you will find, as I found out in the past, that, you know, I've bought them off of eBay and then it's had a mismolded, I've gone to the original and he sent me the part free of charge, you know. It's a real community spirit doing those, so certainly, you know, knock yourself out and get yourself a nice big kit. Okay, next up, back to the real world, as I call it. We've got here, totally new to me. I haven't actually looked at, heard of, or indeed built ever, a Takom kit. Totally new to me. Peter Harris, one of our guys, comes to our geek meets every month here, brought it along and we had a look at it and everything else. He's left it me to review to show you. So let's have a look. Hi, welcome to Flory Models. I'm Flory. Review time. Something a little bit different, certainly from a manufacturer I haven't seen or dealt with before. This is the Takom, or Takom. This is the Leopard C2. Basically, this is the Canadian MBT, or main battle tank, everything else. But as I said, I haven't seen this manufacturer before. To be honest, this is one of our members, Pete's kits, and he's lent it to me to review. And I actually haven't even looked inside the box yet, so it's all going to be a surprise. First thing you notice, it's a very nice standard glossy brush. You've got the usual type of details of about what you actually get inside the box. The numbering of this one is number 2003. Which I presume is its third one it's done rather than its year. So we've got a couple of markings, as you can see on the box. So we've got the Afghanistan markings from 2006 on the tanks. A bit of artwork on there, this is the proto version. What you're going to get in the box, so as we can see, we've got multicoloured styrenes, some hulls. What looks like we've got some little bit of photo etch, a little bit extra, and a Afghan local. Things like that we go through. So as you can see, something a little bit different. So let's have a look in the box. It's a very nice box. I know I'm a weirdo with boxes, so I love boxes and things like that, but it's actually quite a nice box. Immediately, as you can see down in here, we've got some nice separately bagged for the different colours and everything else. God, is that tracked? Okay, and everything in. So what I'm going to do is, before I'm making complete words of myself, I'm going to just pop down and have a look at the instructions. Again, quite nice. So we've got in here a heat sealed bag, so we're going to whip this guy open. Carefully go down there so we don't end up cutting everything. So in here we actually get We've got some grommets, rubber grommets there, locking grommets we've seen before lots and lots of times. So we've got a set of them. We've got a couple of bits of clear plastic, which we're assuming are for the lights, which aren't massively clear, shall we say, but they'll suffice for the lights. A little bit of string, which no doubt would be a case of paint it metal or black or whatever you want to do, and do it. Quick tip, if you get a little bit of wax on your fingers and rub it down it, okay? That way you stop all the fibres and the hairs, they will lay down there. Then you paint them and it welds them on. So there we go, quick tip about doing that one. We got some little decals here, very nice markings as you can see. So we got the scorpions, looks like sort of a, well, we've got the spider, sort of Norseman type job there, and something else in the middle. Some other type of markings down on there, the Canadian markings as you can see, and everything else looking quite nice, and it's a perfectly sealed in bag. All right, we've got a little bit of photo etch as you can see here, so we've got some radiator grills and various other parts which we'll have a look out for in a moment, but again, very nice little bag. I love the way this is presented, lovely little presentation. Okay, looks like we've got an update sheet. So this is obviously a slight difference to what we're going to get in the booklet itself. So it's showing here about obviously the metal grill going in there, some other few metal parts, and for opening up holes. So you've got numbers 6, 7 and 17, 18 and 24 parts got to be changed on there. We have here beautifully done, very glossy, shiny booklet. Okay, with a fantastic maple leaf on the front. A little bit obviously about the actual squadron that actually went out taking the C2 into Afghan and everything else. And then we job on, so very old school, the actual way, the little sort of applying them. We've got the usual call out for your parts tree, everything else like that, if this will all fit in one page, just about. Going through, and as you can see, usual way, so lower hull, starting to put all the gear in, full length suspension, so you're going right the way across, wheels going on, obviously have a look at the Merkava, we talk about painting wheels, various things like that, and I think I showed it on a new show as well. Okay, and then obviously all the details running through the lower hull. First thing that strikes you looking at this is very clear, very simple, very crisp, very sharp. Okay, so part 7, we've got down here 6 and 7, we've got our upgrade sheet here talking about it. So basically we've got a small little hole here saying about filling that one, which is to do with that one, and then we've got part 7, which over here, again there's a couple of holes. It's basically talking about filling holes actually and removing them. That's all it is, so it's not too much of a problem. It's not a definite correction, it's obviously something that's just missed off. Top half of the hull, some of the armour going in on the side, some of the front armour going in there as we can see, generally going across, again putting the tracks together. It doesn't say how many, but there will be lots of tracks to go together no doubt. Alright, working your way through, so this is that cable system we were talking about, so you can pop that in, or obviously you can get replacement one. Right the way through, talking about the main gun area, up on the turret, putting this one in, all in there. I don't know what a heartbreak symbol means. Are we talking photo etch is the heartbreak symbol? Just want to check this. Instant glue. So a heartbreak symbol actually means using instant glue, which in our case super glue, or you know, CA glue, but I haven't seen it as that symbol before, so that's going on there. Talking about the decals going in, obviously you do that last. Okay, rear part of the helmet. It's amazing, this turret looks like a sort of Cold War T-72, T-62 tank, the way it is, and then it has the extra bits bolted onto it, which makes it the sort of more modern look. But there we go. So anyway, going in, you've got the top gun as well, the turret's up and closed. This is lovely, this is very glossy. You've got your little Afghan man, which obviously is a real picture of it, putting in the turret usual way. Sometimes I cut those off so they can be positioned anyway. If you do that, just be careful that everyone knows you've cut them off, because you get other people, they pick it up by the turret. And it's okay until you get 3 feet off the table and then the bottom drops off. Yes, I have been there. Okay, so going in, you've got the markings as we were saying here. So we've got the 1986, they're both ones from the Royal Canadian Horses section, markings in there. So it obviously it is just off the 2, and then obviously you've got 4 different markings for obviously different squadrons going on there. Attach both sides and everything else. Very nice. I have to say, I do love the way that's presented. It's simple, it's clear, very, very precise. It's not complicated at all, the way, well, it looks anyway. So let's have a look in the bag. Right, let's start off straight in with the top and bottom turret. Okay. One piece lower hull. Okay, I know the armour guys, the purists out there, like to put them all together. Personally, for mine, saves a lot of time. So you can just do it like this. A couple of ejector pin release marks, because obviously this is one piece injection moulding, okay? So you've got a couple of bits. Nice little weld lines running down there. Generally the detail is a little bit flat, shall we say. You know, we're not going to get massively excited over it, but certainly it's all there. By the time you go around and liven it all up and everything else like that. You got the markings down there saying it's 2013, so we know it's a new kit, and everything else. Top of the hull, again, it's nothing you would say, wow, look at that detail. And don't take this the wrong way, but all armour to me looks the same. Okay, having only done very limited amounts of it, but there's only so many ways you can do a bolt. There's only so many ways you can do sort of weld lines and stuff like that. So it's not like with aircraft models, sometimes it's a lot better than others, shall we say. They tend to be with, or from my opinion, certainly, when you look at the way armour models are, they've all reached a really high level. There's very rare you can get a nav kit, especially if you're talking, you know, you can look at a Tamiya kit from sort of the 1970s and 80s. They don't look any different from a modern day one now by somebody else, because, you know, they've got to that certain level of it. The only things that tends to change somewhat, like this kit has got, is the weld lines running around it. You know, it's quite nicely detailed, the way that those goes in there and everything else. And as I call it, squished glue marks, because that's the easiest way to do weld work. But generally, as you can see, very nice running down in there. They've even taken the time, as you might be able to see out here, these white marks, ejector pins, they've taken them off. So somebody in a factory's got a pair of side cutters cutting them all off, which saves us doing it. Okay, let's see if we can get in these without destroying the bags. Again, the other thing as well, when you look at the sprue, they are spaced out. You know, they're not massively on top of each other, which again is quite a nice touch, because you can get in there with a pair of scissors or your side cutters or a knife without destroying the part next to it. Just saying, it's just one of those little things you spot from doing this for far too long. Again, looking and feeling the riveting detail on the top, or the bolt detail I should say, very nice, very sharp. When you run your finger over it, you can feel it. It's quite scratchy, which is nice. Okay, looking at it, tiniest amounts of flash, but I'm not even going to say it's flash. Ejector pin marks do seem to be all nicely out of the way. They're all very, very shallow. Got a little bit of black marks on them, which tends to be the release agent as it's releasing everything from the mould. As you can see, the mould itself is quite dirty. Sometimes that happens when it's a brand new mould, and it happens when it's an old one. I'm guessing it's because it's very new. It makes it very sharp and everything else. But generally, looking at the parts, very nicely done. Can't see any problems with this absolutely anywhere. Different as well, it's got a cutout. That's actually, normally it just says, but they're actually stamped out. The actual sprue ones, quite nice. Again, looking at all the parts, a little bit, tiny bit flashy. It's as if you're being really picky now. And obviously the more I'm doing the reviews, the more I'm being a little bit picky. So if we just drop this top camera down a little bit closer, and we just bring the side one in just that fraction more, you can see what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about really, in this one here, if I put, probably without the finger underneath better, but you might be able to see, it's just got, the holes are slightly closed. Now don't get me wrong, you can come in here with something tiny like a little, you know, you've got something on your little pin vise, and a little tiny one, and you can come in here, and this is perfectly the right size, and you can clean them out with ease, and it makes a real nice thing. So really, you're not worried about it. The gun itself, quite nicely detailed. Everything else is very nice. I can't see any problems with that whatsoever. But say, if you look at the sprue, it does seem to be very spaced out versus other ones where they tend to be very much on top of each other and things like that. Okay, we'll do him last, because I want to see him last. Alright. Some of the heat sealing on the bag isn't brilliant, hence they just pop open. So, duplicate sprue, so we won't need to see that one again. Again, looking at the wheels, as you would expect, looking at, you know, obviously some of the tie eyes, things like that. The axles running right the way through, very, very clean, very, very crisp. Again, as I say, stamped out on this one here.
Quite a nice touch. But the nut and bolt details are actually in the wheels and everything else, and all the small parts very nicely crisply done. Nothing wrong with that at all. Practical weight to last as well. So this little guy we're going to have to cut. Up here we've got the top turret. So as you can see, this top turret, we've got limited cast marking. It's actually very greasy with release fluid. I'm guessing it's a new mould. They tend to be like that. But you do have very nice things like here, like this texture on the actual, I assume that's the main gun area. It's very, very nice. Got some nice different reliefs on that. The actual main port itself for the gun looking very, very good, and the coax areas nicely detailed. There's no, it doesn't look like a cast, like cast iron. You're assuming this probably is the way the turret is actually done. There's none on there, but the weld marking all the way around it is very, very nice. You know, no problems with that at all. Does seem to be pretty good. Looking at the main gun itself, again, nice details with all the covers on there and the cover latches put in there. The hatches, again, you know, nothing you can complain about. No flash on this particular sprue whatsoever. A couple of tiny ejector pin mark. You might be able to see them just down here on my finger. You've got down there where obviously the pin got a little bit of release around it, but this is me being extremely picky now. Generally, nothing you would worry about anywhere on that. Very nicely done. Nice and clean. Okay. If you can just flip it. It's all burnt all the way through, or just run the blade here. Okay, so again, side armour units, again, quite nice texture to it. You've got that sort of flat, dead flat texture. There is little raised ridges on there between, as if it has got the armour sort of piled on top of each other. Okay, these side skirt ones looking nice. Again, the general raised relief area, very sharp, very nice as you're working your way around. Tiniest amount of flash and clean up just required on some of these little parts down the side. But again, the only thing I'm doing this, and I'm thinking now, Matchbox. You know, you older modelers will know what I'm talking about now, because when you get things and they're in different coloured, you know, like this, and it says in the box, no paint required. Really? It's not green and diarrhea brown. Okay, but generally, as you can see, got tiny little bits of flash on the actual mould here. I'm thinking this is probably because it's very, very new, and they do tend to get a tiny little bit of flash, and the release mould's a little bit heavy with the first few hundred out of the machine. So I think that's what's happening here. But generally, as you can probably see, it's very nicely done. You know, ejector pin marks, they're all out of the way. Nothing's going to stand in your way of putting this particular one together. So now, let's have a look at the tracks. Well, look, I tell you what, let's not. Oh, go on then. You've talked me into it, seeing as the bag's falling open anyway. Let's just grab one screw. So we know we've got multiples of this particular screw, and then you're going to get multiples of this. Okay. So actually what you've got on this one is a system of making your own flexible track. Alright, which you don't get an option in the box for doing it out of rubber, so you are going to spend an evening putting this together. But generally you've got the blocks, they all seem to be very nice, very sharp, very crisp. We've got no flash on this whatsoever, so apart from taking you forever to make a cleanup job on this, it is pretty straightforward. So basically what you actually have here is the main track itself. Then you've got the sidebars going on, and then these little guys go over every one, and it's these that link them together, hence they're in rubber. Now, if you want to make sure these never come apart, easiest way is thinned PVA glue right the way over the lot as you build it in sections. That's enough then to hold it all in, but it gives you the flexibility to do it. I know a lot of guys don't even bother because they do tend to hold very well. These do grip on very, very nicely when they actually anchor onto these, but if you don't want it to fall off and, you know, come apart, and then obviously once you've got it all together, you can get it down, weight on wheels, get the track pushing down. You can put a tiny bit, again, thinned PVA glue, because you'll get no leftover. The capillary capillary action draws it completely in, which gives you a nice sort of rubber effect as if it's pushing down onto the track itself and everything. So it just saves it all falling apart. But you do get in there, so what we got here, 3, yeah. So you've got 3 sprues of track, multiple links of this. You've actually got 2, 4, 6, 8 lots of that, I think that is, in this particular bag, so it's a fair old amount in there. Right, last up, we won't bother getting him out of the bag because he's far too cute, but what you have got is a little Afghan, I presume local, with an AK. So I'm not quite sure why he's like that, but what he has got is a nice little AK-47, which is quite a nice touch. You've got him obviously wearing traditional clothes and things like that. Positioned head, you will be able to position the arms and all those things that go along with it, so it's quite nice as we make our way through. And a nice little extra if you want to do a diorama. Personally, I think it might have been nicer to have some crew with it or something like that, but then again, I'm not sure about this kit. Perhaps they've done an aftermarket crew tank set to go along with this one, so it's personal as if however you want to do it. As said, first time looking at this, immediate my effects, you know, my impressions of this one, I should say, is very nice, very clean, very sharp kit as well. As I said, it's the Canadian Leopard, so you know, quite nice to see it in those wings. Beautifully printed, beautifully presented. Nice to see it in separate bags like this. A decent quality box and everything else. So really, I can only give this a total thumbs up. Okay. Great looking kit, that one. As I said, something a little bit different. Matchbox. Every time I look at that, if I see a kit and it's in 3 different colours, I immediately think it's a Matchbox kit. I'm scarred for life. You know, that's the trouble with this thing. Anyway, so nice kit. If you have built one, let me know how it goes together and everything else like that, and I can pass it on to everybody else. Right, no new show next week because I'm not here. As I said, I've got to leave here. I've got a couple of the guys coming to here. We're taking up a car full of us, are going up to RAF Valley for the day, meeting other members up there as well. Thanks a lot to Ian for sorting this one out. So we're going to be spending the day at RAF Valley playing with the Hawks and everything else and having a look around RAF Valley. I'm really looking forward to that. Should be a lot of fun. Because of that, that's on the Thursday, so I won't actually be here. So, and obviously I won't get back till about 2:30 in the morning. So certainly it'll be a long old day. So won't be able to do a news show next week. The following week, obviously we'll have lots from RAF Valley, hopefully, and all catching up and everything else like that. So plenty to look forward to. In the meantime, the Easter egg extravaganza and all it gets worse every year is going on at the moment, and what is lovely with those is these kits are a doddle to put together. You have a cockpit normally, which is not even a floor. You get a head of somebody, 2 halves go together, put the wings on and the gear. Or you can do like Fleming's done here and super detail one completely up, put a slight twist on it as well, change it all about and have lots of fun with it. So I'm going to leave you this week with his fantastic Hughes 500, which he's done a complete scratch build job on the inside and a few bits on the outside and a great camo scheme and everything else to boot to go with it. So I'm going to leave you with his fantastic work. So until 2 weeks time, everybody, take care and happy modelling.